What's the problem with women and money? And it really may surprise you because there really isn't a problem. We just believe a bunch of lies that we've been told our whole life. We bought into the myth that women are not good with money. Be sure to stay to the end. We've got a drawing that we're going to be holding, and we want you to be part of it. You probably were exposed to that in school, maybe even as early as elementary school, being told that, girls aren't good at math, girls aren't good at science, girls aren't good at all those manly things, and girls are, should take home ec and just look pretty. But that could not be further from the truth, because women actually are amazing with money. They are so good with it, but just have not had the exposure, perhaps, that many men have had, because typically men have been managing the household. That's been going on since like before our parents. And we've got to break that mold. We've got to shift that gear and change it. And, so I was telling Allison before we started this recording, I believe so much of it is what I call in between the ears. It's what we think and what we believe. So we want to change our thinking. We want to change our beliefs. It's not as easy as it sounds. However, the more you expose yourself to thinking differently, the easier it becomes. And I see so many clients. I'm working with someone right now who is on maybe you could call it the tail end of her divorce. And she said to me the other day, she goes, "So really, this process, it's really just business, right?" And I said, "Yeah, it really is. I know it's emotional for you, but this is business. This is number crunching. This is, technical stuff." And with all the financial planners that I work with over the years, I have heard so many times them profess, most of them are men, and they profess that they would much prefer to work with women clients as opposed to male clients. You may ask yourself the question, why is that? And it's because they say women listen, whether they follow the advice or not. We listen, we're inquisitive, we want to learn, we want to do better than wherever it is we are right now today in our walk. And so we listen. And then we take into account what they've shared with us and whether or not it's something we want to pursue. Have you seen this to be true, Allison?
As you were talking, Elizabeth, I thought of a story that happened in my life. And when I spent 30 years working in the financial services industry. It's around money all the time, transactions. And yet I hated money, hated it. It was just anathema to me. And I didn't like it. I could manage other people's money because, like you said, when it was, doing equities or whatever I needed to do, because it was numbers and it was the job and it was technical. But when it became real money, it was uncomfortable for me. And I remember when I was getting ready to get married to my second husband and we went to meet my parents. And I told him before we got there, whatever you do not talk to my father about money, because we don't talk about money in my family. And we got there and he opened his big old fat mouth. Yeah, ex-husband. And he starts blabbing off about how much money he makes and what he's going to do to support me. And lo and behold, my father starts answering and talking back. What I had learned growing up was that we as a family didn't talk about money. And what they were trying to tell me is that I, as the daughter, was not supposed to talk about money. Now, I'm probably older than most of you on here listening, and that's okay. Because the reality is we are wired the way we're wired as women. After thousands and thousands and thousands of years of evolution and cultural roles. It's only been, a little years ago was 1930. They were in the Great Depression. 150 years ago, we didn't have electricity, cars, telephones, nothing. So realistically, in a very short time, all of our society and our roles in society as women have changed. But yet the culturalization and the wiring, all that stuff under the water that happens, like my father convincing me that we as a family didn't talk about money when it was really supposed to be just me. All that stuff is still out there and it's still lingering, and we've got to work through it. And I love something you said before we jumped on this call, Elizabeth, when you talked about the poverty mindset and how, as women, we're the ones that are supposed to clip the coupons, manage the budget. We get a budget to pay for the groceries and the this and the that and the other. But where in all of this does it talk about money and how we use it to find happiness or pleasure in our lives, or that it's even okay to spend any of it on ourselves? Can you talk a little bit about the poverty mindset, Elizabeth?
I sure can. And before I head there, though, I want to share something. It's kind of a funny to me now, but you said, you talked about happiness, and you hear that expression so often that money can't buy happiness. And it's true, because happiness actually is within us. But my ex-husband used to say, money sure can't buy happiness, but it damn sure can pay off unhappiness. And so when you said that, it reminded me of that. And it used to always make me laugh. It's like, that is so true. And the reality is that money is needed. It's needed to buy goods and services. It's how we help the poor. It's how we serve it's one of the ways we serve our community. Money is a very important tool, and we have to learn to talk about it, and we have to learn to get comfortable with it. And I went through an exercise years ago. I was creating a debt program to help people get some debt relief and make their way out of being a slave to debt. And in that, I was putting together some exercises on how to address your money issues, because I think a lot of us tend to think, oh, I don't have a money issue. I was one of those people. I thought, I don't have a poverty mindset. I don't have an issue with money. I don't have any, I know, yeah, my parents used to say money doesn't grow on trees, and all those sayings, heard them. I understand, but no, I don't have a problem. And as I was writing the program, one night I had a dream, and the dream took me back to the 1980s. So I'm dating myself. I was just starting my career, and I was working in banking, and I was the head teller for the largest branch office in the city. And back then, and remember, this is a few years ago, our branch cash limit was $500,000. Back then, that was considered a ton of money for a branch to have in operation in any given day. Well, at the end of the day, I would have to count the money. I mean, physically count every single bill or straps in the vault. So I had to count $500,000. Nowadays, they have machines that do it, but we had to do it, and we were doing it with our hands. And you have tacky tape that helps the bills not stick together and all that. And I'm counting this money. And I remembered, as I was having this, or when I woke up from the dream, I remembered that when I used to count that money, your hands turn black from the ink, and your fingertips, you just feel filthy. And I remember I used to count that money going, oh, this is so dirty. Oh, this is so dirty. Oh, this money's dirty. Oh, this money's nasty. That wired it into my subconscious. And I was always trying to get rid of it, because if you count it, you were moving your hands like this. So it's in that motion that you're dispersing, you're pushing it away. And I realized, oh my gosh, that is like wired in my subconscious, that I push money away and I think of it as dirty. I had to do a lot of work to get past that. And so I do believe that many of us have those kind of tapes playing in our head, whether we realize it or not. And you've got to do a little bit of work to uncover that and figure out, do you have some triggers? I remember standing in the grocery store, and probably a gazillion other women can cite a similar incident. You're standing in the grocery store to check out your groceries, and this is back when you had to have a cashier. And you've got the bubble gum and the candy bars and all this stuff sitting right there, and your kids are going, "I want, I want, I want." And what do we say? We can't afford it. You can't have that, because that's the easy answer. It's easy to tell the kids you don't have the money for it, because then maybe they'll stop the pestering. Well, now we're conditioning our kids. We don't have enough. And that's where poverty mindset plants a seed and starts taking root. We don't have enough. We don't have enough. And there's never enough. The paycheck doesn't last to the next paycheck, so you don't have enough. And all we do is we just keep reminding ourselves year after year, event after event, how we don't have enough. And that is where the poverty mindset comes from. And when you tell yourself that enough, even though you think maybe you don't believe it, maybe you think, no, I really have an abundant life mindset. And I do believe I'm capable, and I believe I'm growth minded, and I can earn more and be more and do more and have more to give and more love and more. I believe that. But do you really? I mean, does your subconscious believe that? Because you might believe that externally in your conscious mind, but does this guy believe it? And that's the battle we all face. And it takes a lot of work, a lot of exercise to break out of that mold. But because we've been training in that ground our entire life.
Elizabeth, you just made me think of a woman I met one time when I was out speaking. And I talked about this whole poverty, women and money thing. And she was older back then, and this was 30 years ago. And she said, when I grew up, I remember my grandmother always wanted me to wear little white gloves. And my grandmother always wore white gloves when she went out, and she handled her purse and she handled her money, because she was literally told women don't touch money. Yeah, wow. And you go, wow. So it's not that long that those type of messages were overtly communicated to women, just like my father's message was overtly communicated to me. But in the, not that long ago, it was very clear. It was women and money. And so I wanted to say that, really do think about this. What Elizabeth said, and going through and doing that, where did this come from? You've got to root it, pull it out by the roots and get rid of that thought, because it is so untrue. And I used to have a sign that hung in my kitchen, and I'm going to close with this. It said, money can't buy happiness, but it calms my nerves. And the point about that is it's not about how much you have, but knowing the value of what you have and what you need to be comfortable and survive and maybe even thrive. So I would challenge everybody here to think about that relationship you have with money, to think about, what are my disconnects here and how might I put them back together? And I want to, if you are interested in this topic, want to make a comment below. Within 10 days, if you comment in the section and write "Coach Me," we'll be drawing for a free money coaching session with Elizabeth. And I promise you, you will come out of there having gained some amazing insight and information that can transform your relationship, as dysfunctional as it may be, with money.